You're listening to Bold Hearts, Big Moves, the show for female entrepreneurs who want it all: a thriving business, deep self love, and fulfilling relationships. I'm Erin Anderson, and each week we will dive into how to set stronger boundaries, make empowered choices, and show up in life and business with boldness, authenticity, and heart. Because let's be real, the money you make is directly related to the love that you have for yourself and the strength of your relationships. So if you're ready to lead with love and make those big moves with those bold hearts, let's dive in.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Bold Hearts, Big Moves. Okay, so here's another thing that I feel like a large part of us struggle with, and even sometimes I do too. And that is just simply listening to our emotions, right? And I get it. Like when you're feeling some sort of an emotional charge, there is a reason they call it a charge, right? There's some stuff behind it. And it can feel really uncomfortable, to be honest with you. And with all of that charge, it puts your amygdala on high alert and immediately can sometimes launch you into fight, flight, or freeze or fawn, right? I get it. Emotions can be kind of scary sometimes. And the idea of sitting there and listening to them can feel a whole lot like listening to a bear that is trying to explain to you why you look delicious. But the truth of the matter is, they're just emotions. They're not here to hurt us as long as we don't jump into immediate action with them. And of course, it takes 90 seconds for an emotion to burn out of your brain, to chemically burn out of your body, I should say. And if we sit with that emotion without retriggering it, oftentimes what is left is some clarity. And we can start to ask ourselves some reflective questions like, why was that there? Why did I have such a reaction to this? What is this emotion trying to tell me? We often tend to try to take all of that energy that we feel from that emotion and get it off of ourselves. And this is part of the reason why Jane Austen said, people who are angry are not always wise. We've been there, done that. Don't always make the best decisions in anger, frustration, or fear, right? We just don't always think clearly. But if we can hold that just for 90 seconds, that's all we're asking for, right? We can start to ask questions about why that showed up. And we can even be reflective in the emotion. Why is this showing up for me? What's coming up? Why is this coming up? Why is this coming up again? Oh, I thought I had dealt with this. Why is this coming up again? Right? And to give you an example of this, and I'm going to actually use a personal example here. A little while ago, I had, without getting into a lot of details, I had someone judge me for taking action on something that they themselves did not understand at all. Now, the action I took was exactly the right action I needed to take in that moment. It wasn't something that it wasn't an action that I had just jumped into. I had actually taken the time to sit back, reflect, and think about what needed to be done with this certain situation that I found myself in. But because this other person had never found herself in that exact same situation, or at least not that I know of, I should say, she felt like she had some type of a right to tell me I'm narcissistic. Now, I don't personally believe that's true simply because the when those words like left her mouth, I was like, "Oh, am I narcissistic? Huh. Maybe I need to look into that a little bit. Like, is there a reason why that triggered me?" Right? No, I don't think I'm narcissistic. I really don't. I mean, everybody has narcissistic tendencies. We all look out for ourselves, sometimes maybe not in the best ways. But when I realized that, okay, no, what they were saying and the foundation that they had put this on was not true, it still bothered me. Now, usually when you run things but for me, when I run things through my listening and my talking boundary, right? And this is a large part of what we're talking about here. Usually it will dissipate pretty quickly. But this specific time, it was really interesting because every single time I found myself around this person, because there's somebody that moves within my circles, right? I found myself irritated. Now, that's not something that I personally love to feel a lot. But because I've learned this, why listening to your emotions is actually essential to creating a boundary, because I've learned this, I learned to listen to why this emotion is showing up. Okay, feeling frustrated, not super fun. I want to feel joyful, bubbly, happy, maybe even a little silly. I like it. It says a lot about who I am, and I love to sit in those energies and those emotions. I love it. So when there's frustration kind of clouding the picture, yeah, I'm not really loving that. And I'm pretty sure if you're listening to this podcast, you get that, right? But I kept noticing layers keep coming up every single time I got around this person. And those layers spoke to a need, a very deep-seated need inside of me to try and control things that were outside of my control. And maybe that's part of the reason why the whole narcissist thing got triggered, right? It's because what do narcissists do? They try to control things outside of their control, right? Um, to some degree. Obviously there's other elements to narcissistic behavior, right? Hence the reason why we all are a little narcissistic. That being said, I really had to sit back and realize, like, oh, that's what it is. I'm still trying to control something that's outside of my control. And as I started realizing, like, there were like 3 or 4 threads that I was trying to control that I really had no control over. Once I set a boundary around each one of those things, it was amazing how quickly that frustration left. And now I can be around this person, and while I still don't trust them necessarily, because nobody likes feeling judged, and that's okay to not trust them, I don't feel captivated by the frustration anymore. Because, see, here's the deal. When you just sit there and listen to what you're feeling, and you start asking yourself these questions like, why is this here? What is it trying to teach me? Well, then so and so shouldn't have done what they. No, no, no. It's not about them. It's about me. My emotion. Therefore, my thoughts, it is mine to own. I cannot own that of another person. I can't own their actions. I can't own their thoughts. I can't own their feelings, like none of it. I can't own something that is not mine to own. Therefore, I have no control over the situation, right? None. So, why am I trying? Next week we're going to be talking about the prove it problem, right? And whenever I'm trying to control something that is outside of my control, what am I trying to prove? And we'll talk more about that next week. But I had to set some really hard, fast boundaries with myself because I didn't want to give or invest more of my, emotional, mental, physical, or spiritual energies into this person. If I don't trust them, the only thing I really should be investing back is just love. Like really, can we just own that for a second? But if I'm feeling frustration, if I'm feeling a lot of anger, if I'm feeling like seriously to them every single time I'm around them, then it's something within my boundaries that needs to be improved. So I'll give you one of the boundaries. One of the things that this person was judging me on was an incident that had happened between my husband and I that she had found out about. And she's someone who has liked to blame me for a lot of things in my life. And it is what it is, right? I mean, this is part of the reason I don't trust her. It is what it is. But I realized that as I was listening to this frustration, that one of the things I was trying to maybe control, even just a little bit, was my husband. Oops. Right? And what I mean by that is I realized that I had some mothering tendencies towards him. Now, this is something that I have been working on for the last 20 years of our marriage. And of course, there's layers, right, that come up. And this was one of the layers that had come up as I was kind of just searching this emotion, this feeling. And so I made a really hard, fast boundary right there. I will not mother him. Well, that is going to mean that I'm going to have to get clear on what not mothering him might look like, right? And sometimes that still might be a little hazy. But the minute I made that boundary, the frustration I felt around this other person immediately went away. That's what boundaries do. And this is why sitting with your emotions are essential to creating boundaries, is because if you ignore your emotions, you will never know what boundaries need to be set so you can operate within you. Operate within your business, operate within your life, operate inside your home, operate within you. You were created to be a unique individual. And like I said, I mean, the Lord himself has created boundaries. He was not going to operate outside of himself in any way. You can even see him doing that in the purging of the temple. He knew himself to be a defender of faith, defender of truth, defender of righteousness, and he defended it at the point of a bullwhip, overturning tables, kicking people out of the temple. This is a place of God. And he didn't budge. He was not afraid to be wholly himself. And in order to be wholly ourselves, we must, A, check ourselves for boundaries, and two, make sure that we live them. We've got to make sure that we're living them, and that means that we have to make sure that we're living them, and so that means that we have to check our emotions. So our emotions are a fabulous indicator or a signal that something needs to change. There needs to be a shift here, especially if this emotion keeps coming up over and over and over and over again. However, when we shut our emotions off, we are also shutting off our ability to connect with other people because we're emotional beings. And without those emotions, we cannot understand another person. And if we cannot understand another person, we cannot understand their needs and their wants and their desires. And if we cannot understand needs, wants, and desires, we have no way to create money. Straight up. It doesn't matter what business you're in. You need to make sure that you take time to check into your emotions, to set the boundaries, to create fabulous relationships, and therefore create an income. This is the way that money comes to us. Always. So, what about when we get a little creative? When we ask ourselves, what do we want to do about it? Right? How do we want to respond to this problem? Well, I know me personally, I have a little bit of a snarky side to myself. And once in a while, that snarkiness has not necessarily served me super well. But I have considered things like putting dog poop in the mail or, you know, just snarky things. And when somebody irritates me enough, that snarky side of me does come up quite often. And I have to, number one, thank you, snarky side. I see you. I acknowledge you. I get that you're here. But the real me, the genuine me, the authentic me is somebody who's kind and loving. So what is the most loving thing I can do here? Asking myself these questions when I'm sitting in this emotion clarifies, number one, not only my boundary, but also who I am and how I operate. Those are necessary when I am running a home, when I'm raising children, and when I'm creating a business that helps support people in whatever way I can, right? Now, I get to rub shoulders with some really, really amazing entrepreneur women that range from coaches to brick and mortar business owners to, you know, uh, multi-level marketers, like business in every single sense. I get to see them. And I can honestly say that their businesses thrive because they understand themselves. They understand their emotions. And because they understand their emotions, they're also very understanding of their boundaries. So, my loves, give yourself an opportunity to really enact your listening and your talking boundary this week. Take a look at what your emotions are really telling you and learn to clarify. Because if you can do this with yourself, you can learn to turn around and do this with someone else. They can come to you all emotional and everything. And one of the boundaries I set was if somebody's going to come to me like freaking out, hey, I can tell that you're having some really strong emotions right now. that's going to be really hard for me to actually hear the problem. So give yourself a few minutes to calm down and let's chat. Let's find out what's going on behind this, right? And because I foster this type of relationship within me, that I truly do listen to my emotions. I also foster this type of relationship in the people that I love the most, as long as they're willing. All right, my loves, hopefully this is helpful, and hopefully this explains how listening to your emotions not only creates a boundary, but also helps lead to thriving homes, thriving joy, and thriving businesses. If you have any questions, please feel free to message the show. And in the meantime, I'll see you next week. Bye, guys.
All right, Boundary Boss Babes. I'm super excited that you tuned in with me today. Make sure you tune in again next week as we chat about more Boundary Boss Babe topics. We're going to get into so many other things about how to set boundaries with your business, how to set boundaries with your relationships, so you can truly have the time, the money, and the flexibility that you are seeking. So tune in next week. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast. Let your other Boss Babe friends know about it. And also, if you've got any questions, make sure you submit them into the podcast by clicking on the send us a text message at the bottom of the podcast description. I look forward to seeing you guys next week. See you later, Boss Babes.